All right, hey, what's up everybody? Landan with LMR.com. In this video, we're gonna quickly talk about the TKX transmission, and then we're going to work into explaining what you're gonna need to put this into a Fox Body Mustang, and then we'll show you installing a TKX into our 1993 road race Fox Body that we call Race Fox. Real quick, without getting too far into the weeds on the TKX, because we have the info on the product page talking about some of the internal upgrades and things that make the TKX so good, but this is a 5-speed rear-wheel drive manual transmission that is used in a lot of hot rod applications. For us, we're gonna be focused on the Fox Body stuff today, but it has great packageability due to its size, and as far as some of the specifications go, it'll support 600 pound-feet of torque, capable of engine speeds of 8,000 RPM, and shifts at 7,500 RPM. And basically, this is the successor to the TKO series of transmission, be it TKO 500 and 600. All right, so moving into some of the fitment notes that you'll need to know when installing this into a Fox Body Mustang. I think I'm just gonna work front to back to kind of keep this organized, but first things first will be the input shaft. Currently, at the time of this video, we offer one 10-spline option for the TKX, and we offer a couple different 26-spline options for the TKX. The 26-spline options have some different overdrives, as well as a few different forward gear ratios. So you'll want to crunch those numbers, see what's going to work best for what you're doing with your car. But speaking of the input shafts, you'll need to make sure that whatever clutch disc you're using or clutch assembly that you're using is correct for the input shaft. 10 spline for 10 spline, 26 spline for 26 spline. More than likely, the T5 that you're taking out of your car is 10 spline, and it's gonna have a 10 spline clutch. If you're going back in with the 10 spline, you may find yourself being able to reuse that clutch if it doesn't have a lot of miles or it's not all beat up. And then of course, if you're going to the 26 spline, you're obviously gonna have to source the 26 spline clutch that's going to best facilitate what you're doing with your car. In this video, we will be using a 26 spline TKX for Race Fox. One of the important pieces for a TKX will be a bell housing. You're gonna have to purchase a bell housing specific for the TKX. This one here works for the small block forward pushrod engines because that's what we're working with today. But if you are putting this into a Coyote or a modular engine, we have those available on the site as well. Speaking of this bell housing, the T5 clutch fork dust cover will also work. This is probably a great time to purchase a new clutch fork, throw-out bearing, as well as the pivot stud that gets installed into the interior portion of the bell housing. As far as the bell housing we're using at the time of this video, this is the Tremec branded bell housing. We're not gonna get down the rabbit hole of indexing this thing to make sure everything's nice and in a line. But indexing basically requires you to take a dial indicator, rotate the crankshaft, and then if you find yourself outside of the tolerance, you would have to install offset dowel pins. We didn't have to do that with Race Fox just because everything was nice and true with the tolerances here on the cast Tremec bell housing for the TKX. Okay, so the TKX that we have on the site, be it the 10 spline and the 26 spline, all will have a 7-tooth drive gear. Make note of that, because depending on the drive gear that's in the transmission that you're removing, you may have to switch out your speedometer gear. I'm pointing right here, but the dang thing is right here. We have the calculator on the site. I'll leave a link to it in the video description, but you just need a little bit of information to determine which speedometer gear you need for your car. Okay, so out back here, the TKX is going to have a 31 spline output shaft. All T5s will have a 28 spline output shaft. But regardless, if you have a drive shaft with a 28 spline yoke, you're gonna either switch it out to a 31 spline yoke to save a little bit of cash, or this could be the opportunity to just upgrade to a different drive shaft with the 31 spline yoke. As far as length is concerned, the same length drive shaft for the T5 can be used for the TKX in a Fox Body Mustang. The TKXs do ship dry, meaning that there is no fluid inside of them. Whenever you're purchasing your TKX, another thing you can add to your purchase list will be Tremec's transmission fluid. The TKX takes 2.7 quarts. We do have a TKX installation hardware that's gonna give you the bulk of the hardware to eliminate a lot of the guesswork when installing the TKX into the car. All right, so there are 3 total connections on the TKX plus 1 mechanical provision. The mechanical provision is over here on the driver's side near the tail shaft, because this is where the drive gear is for the speedometer gear. This is going to be utilized if you're still running a mechanical speedometer cable. The first electrical connection is the reverse light switch. It's over here kind of in the center of the case on the driver's side. The other 2 electrical connections are over here on the passenger side, and they're closely grouped together. You can't miss them. The one with the pigtail is the neutral sensing switch. The other one is an electronic vehicle speed sensor. This won't be used if you're using a mechanical speedometer. If that's been omitted and bypassed, and let's say you're running an aftermarket digital instrument cluster, you could find yourself using the electronic vehicle speed sensor. All right, so moving into some of the installation notes now. None of this is over the top. It's actually very, very simple. But due to kind of the mixing and matching of parts, there's just some things we have to do to make stuff work. Number one, what we found when putting this in the 1993 Fox Body was that the transmission mount, when it gets bolted to the transmission, you have your spacers situated. Due to the length of the bolt, it may come in contact with your mechanical speed sensor. In order to bring it down some, you'll need to source a few washers and space the underhead of the bolt so that it doesn't come in contact with your speed sensor. All right, and the second fitment note is gonna involve the crossmember and the transmission mount. Whenever you get the crossmember situated into place, you'll probably find that the bolt holes here in the transmission mount won't 100% align with the slots in the Stifler's crossmember. If that's the case, all you have to do is take a carbide bit and a die grinder and elongate the bolt holes on the body bracket about a 1/4 inch to the inboard side. That's it. Once you make that modification, swing your crossmember back into place, check the alignment for the bolt holes in the transmission mount and the crossmember, and if you need to remove a little bit more material, well, remove a little bit more material. So that's it. Those are the only two fitment notes that we ran across when using these particular components in RaceFox. And then the last thing will be shifter handles. The OEM T5 handle or the OEM style T5 handle that we sell on the site, due to its design, it's not going to work with the shifter assembly here for the TKX. So you will have to go to an aftermarket shifter handle. The center to center length here on the bolt holes for the shifter handle, they're the same as a T5, so all of your aftermarket T5 handles should work with the TKX. I say should just because you never know, but the handles that we have on the site, we make note of whether or not they work for a TKX. All right, so moving into kind of some pre-install prep. Again, we're working on RaceFox. It's a 1993 road race Fox body. No interior. We don't utilize a neutral sensing switch, so you won't see us reconnect this. So when you get to that point, make sure you get it reconnected and then situate it out of the way so it don't come in contact with any of your exhaust components. Outside of that, most of the stuff you're gonna see is going to be verbatim for all of you. We are going to a 26 line TKX, so you'll see us install a new clutch disc and pressure plate assembly. The flywheel that's in the car, Hubbard deemed was okay, so we left it in place, and that's where you'll see us pick up once we get to the installation steps. All right, so you'll want to get started by removing the upper shifter bezel and boot if you have one in your car. RaceFox being a race car, we don't have it. Remove your shifter handle and then remove your lower shift boot. Hubbard went ahead and removed the shifter assembly since the floor pan area had already been modified. Most of you will just leave this attached. Now we can move underneath the car and get the exhaust piping out of the way. Start by removing the mid-pipe to catback hardware. Wrenching size could differ, but most cars should have 9/16 hardware. Disconnect the oxygen sensors and then remove them from the mid-pipe. Use a 7/8 wrench or a specific O2 sensor bracket to remove the sensors just so you don't accidentally damage one of them. Support the mid-pipe and remove the header to mid-pipe hardware. Then you can go ahead and get the mid-pipe out of your way. Hubbard went the route of draining the fluid from the T5, so if you do this, just position the drain pan underneath the transmission and remove the plug with a 3/8 ratchet. Now we can remove the transmission crossmember hardware. Start by removing the nuts securing the crossmember to the mount, followed by the nuts securing the crossmember to the body brackets. Remove the speedometer gear from the transmission, along with any electrical connection. If you're reusing the existing drive shaft and just transferring the yoke, place a reference mark on the rear flanges. Remove the 4 drive shaft bolts with a 12mm 12-point wobble socket. Remove the 4 bolts securing the transmission to the bell housing. Support the transmission and remove the crossmember bolts and crossmember. Slide the transmission rearward so that the input shaft clears the bell housing, and then get the transmission out of your way. Remove the 2 starter bolts and set the starter to the side. Remove the clutch cable clip and slide the cable out of the fork and bell housing. Now we can remove these 6 bell housing to block bolts, and the bell housing can be removed. At this point, you can reuse a good clutch assembly and flywheel or switch it out for new stuff. Since the TKX that we're using has a 26 spline input shaft, we'll have to upgrade the clutch. If you're doing the same, you'll first need to remove the existing pressure plate and clutch disc. Inspect the flywheel and either replace, resurface, or run what's there if it looks good to do so. This is also a good time to replace the pilot bearing. And if you've gone as far as removing the flywheel, replace the rear main seal as well. To make quick work of the pilot bearing, we use a slide hammer and the correct attachment to remove it from the outer shell. Red will also work if you're in a pinch. Quick tech tip, you don't have to remove the old shell. Make note of how far the bearing is pressed into the new shell, and then drive the new bearing into the existing shell with an appropriate socket. Most of the time, a 1/2 inch drive, 17mm deep socket does the trick. Clean the surface on the new pressure plate with a towel and some brake parts cleaner. Verify that the clutch disc fits smoothly onto the input shaft. Apply a PTFE lubricant to the splines and then work it in with the clutch disc. Now we can position the clutch disc into place using the disc alignment tool. Pretty much all clutch kits come with one of these. Install the pressure plate over the dowels in the flywheel and run down the bolts. These torque to 24 pound-feet in a crisscross pattern. You can go ahead and remove the clutch disc alignment tool. Apply some blue thread locking compound to the pivot stud and install it into the bell housing and tighten it down. Make sure you apply grease to the pocket and to the contact areas on the clutch fork and then install it onto the pivot stud. Some throwout bearings have a pin or a raised spot that needs to be positioned away from the pivot stud. Situate the throwout bearing onto the clutch fork and then lubricate the inside race with a PTFE lubricant. The correct dowel pins are already installed into the engine block, so Hubbard situated the bell housing into place. Install the bell housing to engine block hardware and snug it down with a 5/8 socket. This hardware will torque to 65 pound-feet. Reinstall the starter and tighten the retaining hardware. Install the hardware that secures the spacer plate to the bell housing and tighten it down. Feed the clutch cable through the bell housing and reinstall the clip. Add grease to the pocket on the clutch fork where the cable eyelet will make contact, and then position the eyelet. Race Fox does have a non-adjustable cable. If you have an adjustable cable, you'll have to run down the first nut, followed by your jam nut. Make sure the transmission is in neutral, and then remove the shifter assembly from the TKX and set it aside. Not having this shifter assembly in place is going to help when installing this onto the bell housing. Hubbard went ahead and strapped the transmission to the jack and removed the speedometer gear provision, cover, and bolt. The bolt is 11mm. Work the plug out of the case with an appropriate size screwdriver. Get the TKX into position and slide the input shaft into place. Hubbard did have a spare 31 spline yoke laying around, so he installed it into the transmission and rotated it to coax the input shaft to fully seat into the pilot bearing. Install the 4 transmission to bell housing bolts and torque these to 45 to 65 foot-pounds. Next, we installed the SVE heavy-duty transmission mount. Make sure the spacers are installed between the mount and the transmission and pay attention to the driver's side bolt. If you use just one of the washers underneath the bolt head, the bolt will make contact with the speed sensor. We added additional washers underneath the bolt head on the driver's side to give the bolt adequate spacing and clearance against the speed sensor. These extra washers were sourced on our own. Go ahead and tighten this hardware down. The wrenching size is 3/4 inch. Now we can assemble the transmission crossmember and bolt it to the car. This will technically only install one way, and you'll know right away if you have it situated correctly. Stack the provided spacers in the orientation you see on screen. Slide a washer over the bolt and then slide it through the factory mount. Swing the crossmember up and install another bolt. Don't install the retaining nuts at this time. Here is where we'll want to verify the alignment between the transmission mount bolt holes and the slots in the crossmember. If they don't align, remove the crossmember from one of the body mounts. Take a die grinder with a carbide bit and elongate the bolt holes towards the inboard side. Mock up the crossmember and verify that the slots on the crossmember line up with the bolt holes in the mount. If they do, you can go ahead and install the hardware. Slide a lock washer over the bolt first, followed by a flat washer. Run these down with an 18mm socket and then fully tighten. Install the nuts that retain the crossmember to the body brackets. Tighten the hardware and then remove the transmission jack. Lubricate the O-ring on the speed sensor and install it into the transmission. Reinstall the retaining bolt and just get this snug. Doesn't have to be super tight. Install the drive shaft and tighten the rear flange bolts. Connect the reverse light and neutral sensing connections. To help hold the shifter assembly gasket in place, Hubbard applied a little bit of spray adhesive and then positioned it onto the shifter assembly. Place the shifter assembly back into the transmission and install the front 2 bolts. The black tape that you see indicates where the tunnel material will be on a factory car. Again, this car has been modified and won't accurately display the tight working area. Go ahead and loosely thread the other shifter assembly retaining bolts. From underneath the car, tighten the bolts that you can't access from the interior. The other bolts can be tightened from inside the car. Remove the fill plug with a 3/8 ratchet and small extension. To make easy work of filling the transmission, use a suitable fluid transfer device. The TKX requires 2.7 quarts of Tremec transmission fluid. Once it's filled, apply some thread sealer with PTFE to the fill plug and reinstall it. Now you can reinstall the lower shift boot and the shifter handle that works with a TKX. Resituate the bezel and then double check your work. Go ahead and take the car for a drive and you're good to go. All right, everybody, so wrapping things up here, the TKX is definitely a solid upgrade for the Fox Body Mustang, be it small block Ford or even Coyote modular. As you saw in the video, Race Fox, it has a 331 engine in it, so small block Ford, and everything went right into place with the exceptions of the very two subtle things we had to do with the transmission mount and the cross member. If you have any questions on this stuff, I know it's impossible to cover every scenario and answer every question in a gosh darn video. So if you find yourselves in question of anything, just drop us a comment or reach out to our customer care team. Aside from that, we're done here. If you find value in what we're doing, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications. And until we see you in the next one, for all things Fox Body Mustang, keep it right here with the Real Enthusiast, LMR.com.